Hi, I thought I'd do a video about modes. Modes were always complicated for me, and I think that's because it made my head hurt. I bought a lot of books and tried to understand it and memorize patterns. And finally, there came a time where I just kind of looked at it and said, "Look, how do I simplify my playing?" Sometimes less is better because it frees up your creativity. And once I understood the major scale, and that when you're dealing with a mode, specifically the Dorian mode, because the purpose of this video is really to talk about the Dorian mode and how to correlate that to its parent major scale. Because basically that's going to be the exact same notes within that, and I'll explain in a little bit more detail. But so, first of all, I used to be confused. Or is a mode a scale? Why do they call it a mode? I buy a book and it would say like Ionian mode. It's a C major scale. So why are we calling it Ionian? Why don't we have one way of calling it? So I leave that to the doctorates in a Juilliard. But I mean, basically for me, they're all scales, and a mode is just a type of scale, and all scales have a formula to it. So if you understand numbers or you can kind of process math, you can kind of get this thing. And math is not that difficult. But remember the numbering system. When you do your scales or you learn your scales, learn the notes of the scales, but learn the numbers that they're at. That will correlate to the tone or to the scale degree. So I call it numbers, but it's basically scale degree. So in the case of a C major scale, you have basically 7 notes with the root repeated. So you got C, which is 1, D 2, E 3, F 4, 5 is G, 6 A, 7th is B, and then 8 is the octave, or 1 again, which is C. All right. So once you learn that, and I think I've played a couple of things where you learn to harmonize them, and that's kind of important in basic theory, basic jazz theory, that the 1 is a major 7th, the 2 is a minor 7th, the 3 is a minor 7th, the 4 is a major 7th, the 5 is always a dominant 7th, the 6 is always a minor 7th, this is always a minor 7th flatted, 5th is the 7th, back to the 7th, the 8, which is the 1, back to C major. So for the purposes of this discussion, you don't need to know all this stuff. Just remember that the 2 is a minor 7th. Now, if you remember your chord construction, a major scale is 1, 3, 5, 7. Those are the 4 notes. So in the key of C, that's C, E, G, B. So that just means that it's just the 1, that's the C, the 3, E, the 5, G, and the 7th, B. That would be a C major 7 because it has the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7. That's a formula. C, E, G, B, period. And that's a C major 7. Now a C minor 7th is the same kind of concept, but you take the 3rd note, you flat it, and you take the 7th note, and you flat that. So it's a flatted 3rd and a flatted 7th makes a C minor 7th chord. So it becomes C, then flatted 3rd because this was an E. This is now a D sharp, E flat. The 5th remains the same. That's the G. And then right here, the 7th used to be a B. That becomes a B flat. So that is those are the notes of a minor 7th, and it looks like that. That's basically the exact same way you play a Dorian mode. So the formula for a Dorian mode is basically all the notes of the scale, but flat the 3rd and flat the 7th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, flat the 3rd, 4, 5, 6, flat the 7th, back to 8, which is the 1. All right. So basic music theory from that perspective. So once I got that underneath my fingers, I knew that the Dorian mode correlates to a major scale. Okay. So after I learned the patterns, I said to myself, okay, let me simplify this because I can't master all this stuff. I just don't have enough time in the day. Let me figure out what all the major scales are, and then correlate a minor seventh chord to a major scale. And I always visualize things because I like to play with my eyes closed. So in the case of, I think I did it first in C, in the key of C. I looked at the key of C and I said, okay, you got D minor seventh, and it works well with C major seventh. So how does that correlate visually on the fretboard? That means that if I go 2 frets down, which is a whole step this way, I end up with the C major. So I can play the C major scale all the time, and it'll sound good. And so what are the areas of C major scales that I knew? And at the time I said, so I'm playing a D minor seventh with the root right here. So I'm going to play all of the C major scales here. Slower. And so I'm here. Then I knew this C major scale here. And I love this one because that meant that I had, so now I had it covered. I had, if I'm hitting any minor seventh chords here, I could. Okay, and so I said, well, how does this work without anything else? It works with any minor seventh chord that you have. So that's an E minor seventh on the 9th as the root. Move it 2 down. That's D, and you can do a D major seventh scale off of it. You can catch it here, like you did in this case. That's D major on the, what is this, on the 10th fret. So that was a basic way of trying to play Dorian mode, but I don't think about Dorian. I actually think of major scales when I'm processing it and I'm playing over a minor seventh chord. There are other things that I do. I end up, chromaticizing things, but that's like my ear working and just like listening to a lot of albums. So I wouldn't always play this. So the notes here would be something like this. I like this note. The note's not in it. I can harmonize it. I can chromatize it. Alright. That's it. First, get down all of the different variations and kind of learn the numbering system, learn your major scales inside out, and where they are in the notes on the fretboard. And then after that, work over minor seventh chords and just use the major scale over them. Because you'll have that sound in your ear. And once that gets a little bit boring, kind of do some dissonant playing and chromaticize it, and your ears will get better. The same thing, we can try like a dominant seventh, but for this purposes of this discussion or this lesson, it was more about learning the major seventh, or I should say the major scale, and then applying that to the Dorian mode or minor seventh chord. All right. Thank you. Hope you like this video.